We're glad you're with us on this Sunday. Welcome to Politics Unplugged. I'm Mark Stewart. A big week in Colorado politics here at home and in the national spotlight. On Tuesday, the U.S. Supreme Court heard the case of the Masterpiece Cake Shop versus the Colorado Civil Rights Commission. The case centers around a gay couple from Colorado and the Lakewood baker who refused to make them a wedding cake. While it will be months before we know their decision, here's what we know about what happened in court. The 4 liberal justices and 4 more conservative justices support the side you'd expect. Justice Kennedy, Anthony Kennedy, in the middle. And interestingly, he has used his swing vote in the past to secure both gay rights, including same-sex marriage, yet also to strengthen religious liberty. And even in this case, Justice Kennedy appears to be split. He argued that a ruling in favor, that is, of baker Jack Phillips might allow stores to discriminate and perhaps post signs saying, "Do not bake cakes for gay weddings." Yet he also ripped on the state of Colorado Civil Rights Commission, saying it seemed neither tolerant nor respectful of Mr. Phillips' religious beliefs when it said he had violated our state's anti-discrimination law. Denver Post Washington correspondent Mark Matthews shared how those arguments went with my colleague Nicole Brady.
Mark, you told us last week on the program that this would likely all come down to Anthony Kennedy. He grilled the baker, Jack Phillips. What were your thoughts on his questions?
So, as expected, all eyes in the courtroom were on Justice Kennedy as he was asking questions of both sides. Early on in the hearing, yes, a number of questions to the plaintiffs here asking about, well, what would happen if the baker here tried to avoid selling a cake in the window shop to them? Would that be any different? He kind of pushed hard on that point. And that was amid a whole bunch of different conversations from the liberal justices on the court who are questioning how expansive might this be? That if Baker Jack Phillips prevails here, will this mean that florists could avoid selling flowers to gay funerals perhaps? Would this mean that photographers could avoid doing photo shoots for gay couples? What would happen there? And Kennedy was listening to a number of these different arguments. But then later on in the hearing, he seemed to take a different tact in which he said, well, like the state here, and again, this is Masterpiece Cake Shop versus the Colorado Civil Rights Commission. He wondered if the Colorado Civil Rights Commission had been intolerant of Jack Phillips' religious views. So there was a lot of question, both within the press corps who was there at the hearing and among everybody else in the marble steps afterwards, which way that Justice Kennedy ultimately will go.
And what was the reaction to his questions?
Everyone was just paying attention. Not too many follow-ups from the other justices. Justice Neil Gorsuch jumped in a couple of times. One, to some laughter, he said that he wasn't a big fan of wedding cake, that it didn't taste very good. But then he also asked a pretty important question about, whether or not the baker in this case, he decided not to do it, not for expression, of whether or not this was superficially refusing to sell them a cake because of their status as a gay couple. And that got some back and forth. It was kind of a curious question for Gorsuch, but some people saw it as a softball for the attorneys on behalf of the baker.
Yeah, we've been keeping a close eye, of course, on Judge Gorsuch, who's from Colorado, of course. I mean, is there any reason to think that he won't go with the other conservatives on the bench? Anything you think will happen there with him?
Right. Yeah. So the widespread expectation is that Neil Gorsuch will side with the baker in this case. His previous cases, while he served in the 10th Circuit, seem to suggest that he gives a broad latitude to religious exemptions. The biggest case, of course, is the Hobby Lobby decision, which he wrote. Hobby Lobby sued the Obama administration over its requirement that employers provide insurance that gives contraceptives to employees. Hobby Lobby sued against this, and Judge Neil Gorsuch, then on the 10th Circuit, he ruled in favor of Hobby Lobby, which the Supreme Court eventually took up and affirmed that decision, including Justice Anthony Kennedy, which is why there's so much attention on Kennedy here, because Kennedy backed with the conservatives in the court on the Hobby Lobby case, but at the same time, he was the lead author on the 2015 case that legalized gay marriage. So he seemed very conflicted over here about, trying to preserve rights for gay and lesbian couples, while at the same time providing a freedom of expression and freedom of religion, viewpoints that he's also come in favor of.
Wow, very interesting. You can't just judge from their past decisions necessarily here. So you had said last week that we may expect kind of a very case-specific ruling here, avoiding some of the more broad precedent or anything that would change that precedent and set a precedent for laws across the country. Where do you think that's going?
Well, right now, some sort of decision is expected by this summer, either way they go. There is the possibility that they do a very narrow ruling, although the likelihood is that there is going to be some blowback in some industry, no matter which way they go. I think if you're in the wedding industry, you can certainly expect this decision to affect the way that you do business, but certainly can go beyond that, whichever way they go. There was some chatter afterwards about the possibility that the Supreme Court might actually punt this back down to a lower court. And the idea being that there seemed to be some concern among the justices about how the Colorado Civil Rights Commission handled this, whether or not they were predisposed to be against Jack Phillips' kind of religious objections. So they might push it back to kind of try to settle that question. But I see that as unlikely. I think it's more than likely that they will actually end up coming up with a decision one way or another.
And we wouldn't expect that till next summer, you said.
Probably sometime in early 2018, correct.
All right. Denver Post reporter Mark Matthews, thank you for joining us from Washington.
All right.
Thank you, Nicole. Stay with us. We're taking a look at the latest GOP tax plan when we come right back.